control rather than to go back to the Bahamas.
That's correct.
The reason for that?
Go back to the Bahamas, my thought in my mind was when we crash or get injured, they don't have the medical staff there in the Bahamas to help you like they do in Florida. They also don't have the runway signs that they do in Florida. There's a lot of factors that go into the thought of which direction do you go.
Yeah.
So I chose Florida.
So walk me back here, because there's a picture of you with your feet propped up on the plane barefoot, and what happened? Walk us through.
So I took that picture and actually showed it to my wife because we were scheduled to go on the same plane that's in that picture for a trip.
Are you hearing him enough? Yeah.
That's sorry. What's up, man? You know how to farm? I don't either.
You do now.
So I had actually taken that picture for my wife to show her the size of room in the plane because we're scheduled to go back to Nassau 2 weeks after that. So I was relaxed in the back, just casually hanging out. All was well, flying straight, no big deal. And after about 2 minutes of taking that picture, because I'm going back and studying the timelines and everything, the pilot comes over the radio, because we all have headsets on so we can talk to each other. And he says, guys, I gotta tell you, I don't feel well. I said, Ken, what's wrong? At that moment, I knew something wasn't right, because when you hear that sound in somebody's voice, you know instantaneously something is truly not right. Something is not gonna go well. So at that instance, I said, Ken, what's wrong? And he said, I'm fuzzy, I don't feel right, and something's wrong. And I said, what do we need to do? And he was already gone.
That quick.
Done.
Wow.
So at that moment, I recognized the problem.
Now there's another guy on the plane as well.
One of his very good friends was sitting in the co-pilot seat.
But he doesn't fly either.
He had flown with him numerous times, but he didn't have flight experience per se to actually fly the plane. So at that moment, I realized he's out. I could feel the plane starting to pitch, because in airplanes, I don't know if any of you guys have been in a boat, let go of the controls of a boat, it'll eventually start going in circles. Airplane has the same similar inertia going on the propeller. It's eventually going to start making a turn, because that's the way the whole motor's spinning. So the plane had actually started to pitch, because what had happened when he actually went out, whatever you want to call it, he had actually flipped off the autopilot. So the plane was essentially going and I could tell that we were headed in a direction that wasn't good.
So what's your response to that?
I immediately slid out of my seat, went to the front, and as I get to the front, I can feel that we're really now heading down in a spin.
Can you see anything?
I can see the water.
Okay.
And I can see it's coming pretty quick. And keep in mind, folks, we had gone from 10,500 feet to we're now at 6,000 feet.
That quickly.
13 seconds. So it was very quick. So we're in a downward turn. And as I approach the front, he's still in his seat, unresponsive. I simply grab the controls and just slowly turn.
Okay. So stop. I remember asking you this question because I said if it had been me, there would have been no slowly turning. I would have jerked the foot out of that thing and pulled it up.
Correct.
Why didn't you do that?
I knew so back up on our way over there when we flew over previously, earlier in the week, we were flying and we were on the approach, and the comment was made, because I always just listen, watch your speed. And I'm like, we're in an airplane. Why do you have to watch your speed in an airplane? There's no speed limits. Yeah. And so I asked a question after they finished our conversation between the pilot and the co-pilot, and I said, well, what's the comment about the speed valve? And he said, if you fly the plane too fast, the airplane will eventually, the wings will come off of it and it'll just turn into a big dart. And so I remember that as I approached the front, knowing that we're way too fast. And that's why I did a slow motion rather than a fast motion.
You got it stabilized?
Yeah. So at that moment, you're in a spin like this. My thought was to bring it back flat and then slowly get it up. So that's what I did. And the slowness was my concern of the wings coming off the airplane. Wow. And as you can see with the top-wing aircraft, it's built a little bit differently than most planes that you're used to seeing. So it's a little bit more stable, but we were still quite a ways past maximum speed of the airplane. It should have been all together, period.
Wow. So there's a lot of miracles that happen in this. We're talking about that.
So many.
At the end of this. So you get it stabilized. Are you talking to anybody at this point to help you?
Nope. I didn't have any headsets on. The only thing I'm doing is trying to calm this buddy down, and I'm just taking control of the plane to get it to a comfortable altitude as opposed to seeing more.
I finally understand what it means to wings.
There you go. That's right. Yeah.
That's literally what you're doing at that point.
There you go.
And eventually a gentleman begins to, walk me through, because initially you could not talk to anybody because of the headset, right?
So what had happened, once I leveled the plane back off, we got up to 8,900 feet, somewhere around there. We were bouncing back and forth because I clearly didn't know what I was doing. But I knew I was at a comfortable altitude to where we could physically do something. And so I asked his friend, I said, can you hold the controls? Because I need to move them out of the way to be able to fly. So at that moment, he took over and just held it flat while I was able to get the pilot out of his seat so I could then sit down and try to attempt to fly.
He's still alive at that point.
He is alive, but he's unconscious.
Okay. And you don't know at that point what has happened.
I have no idea.
Okay, fill in that blank.
At that point, I basically figured he had a heart attack or something and he was gone. So I moved him to the back. When I sat down, I went to move his headset and put it on, and nothing was happening. I couldn't talk to the guy next to me. So I grabbed the wires and I pulled up. There's just raw wires that needed to pull up. Because when I moved the gentleman out of the seat, it actually pulled the wires out of the dash.
Wow.
So at that point, I thought I was like, oh, there goes one of my lifelines, so I'm out.
Yeah.
But we had another headset in the back. I actually snagged the guy in the right seat's headset, and he had gotten one of the ones from the back. So I was able to actually communicate. Still at the time, I didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get set up. And we were not headed back towards the arena either. We were headed due south.
Wow. So you finally got to communicate with somebody. It turns out that he is a flight instructor.
Correct. Yes, he just so happened to be working that day, another miracle, all the ones I've told you about. And he was on his lunch break. They heard the call come over the radio, and they went and grabbed him out of the break room, and they said, hey, there's a guy flying a plane that doesn't know what he's doing, you need to go help. And so he instantly came and got on the radio. And after the fact, I learned he printed out pictures of the cockpit, because there's only two options in that cockpit. He printed them out so he could physically tell me where the gauges were and what I needed to do based upon the picture he had in front of him.
Amazing.
And walk me through it.
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah, there's so many things that happen that you and I know are God things, but at the time you're in the flow. It's about survival.
That's correct.
So he talks you through coming toward forward, right?
Yes.
And I think there's a point where he says, "Can you see land?"
Yes. So I knew I was headed towards Florida just because of the compass, because we had lost all the electronics as far as all the navigation goes. Like I said, the autopilot was off. We had lost that side of the screen when the flip had got turned off, the switch had got turned off that I didn't know about. And so as I approach, I tell them what I'm seeing, and there is a airport there, which is a smaller airport. And they actually said, well, we want you to turn and go up the beach, and we'll tell you where you need to land at as you get further up the coast.
Because a small airport might not accommodate
Correct.
emergency.
So the thought there, in my mind, it's not a proven fact, I don't know, it's not research, but my thought was that was a smaller private airport that doesn't have the emergency personnel, such as a big commercial airport. And it also doesn't have an airport runway that the big commercial airport that I landed at had.
So I know we're limited on time here, and I want to hear about the flaps. You shared this story with me, and I don't remember seeing so much about that in the interview, but tell me about when they tried to get you to utilize the flaps to slow the plane down so you know what to do once you land.
So, as I approached the airport, I was still too high, and I was not in a hurry to ditch the plane over and try and land it. My thought was, take your time, recognize what's going on, slow down, and just make your approach the best you can. As I passed the airport, and as I started to turn, the gentleman comes over here and says, we need to work on the flaps. I said, okay, well, I don't even know what that is or where they're at, help me out. He says, grab the far right control, pull it down one notch, and that's what we call one notch flaps. I said, okay, that sounds good. I didn't realize that an airplane, when you put flaps in it, it immediately goes like this. It shoots up, because you have to, what they call now that I've learned, trim the airplane out to where you're compensating for it. The idea of the flaps is to slow the plane down. As soon as I did that, the nose shot up. I felt like I lost control. And I immediately put it back, Came over to the radio, and I said, I think something might be broke. He goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, this plane doesn't like flaps. He said, that plane, you have to trim it out a lot, and put the flaps into it. I said, okay. He goes, try it again for me, and let's see what we can do. Be prepared to nose into it. I said, okay, not a problem, I'll try it again. Scott, I think the second time was worse than the first time. I swear I thought we were going to the moon. So I immediately put the notch flaps back into it. Come back over the radio, and I said, buddy, I don't know how to tell you this, but I ain't flying with flaps. And he goes, well, not a problem, no flaps it is. I said, okay, are you sure I can land this thing with no flaps? He said, you got plenty of room, I'm not worried about it, don't do any flaps. So that had eliminated the flap part of the story, which was actually one of the most stressful parts besides the dive and the whole situation.
Wow. So take us through the landing, what happens?
So when I was passing out, before we got to the flaps part of the story, I had asked him on the radio, because in my mind I knew I was going to put the plane on the ground. Did I think that I wasn't going to come out unhurt? Absolutely not. I thought I was going to wind up upside down in a ditch. I didn't know. But I did go to the radio and I said, hey, when I land this plane, how do I stop? Because the airplane's just going to keep going if you ask me. I don't know how to stop it. So he actually walked me through the brake pedals on the feet, at your feet, of how to stop it. So as I'm approaching, here's a couple of key facts. I was doing 140 miles an hour, which is almost double what you're supposed to do when you land. And there was a 28-mile-an-hour crosswind. So as I was coming in very fast, pretty risky, obviously, but I had a 10,000-foot runway. And I had certain points in my mind where there were landmarks. There was a big building. I knew if I was over that, obviously I was good. Once I got past that, I was over the airport. I know it's smooth. I could actually drop out of the sky and still land on airport property. So at that point, once I passed those, it got to a certain point to where I looked at the guy next to me, and they kept telling me, you need to slow down, you need to slow down. And we kept moving the throttle down, and I finally looked at the guy next to me, and I said, hey, just take the throttle and dump it. He's like, what do you mean? I said, push it down as far as it will go, push it into the floor, and I don't care what happens, just as far as you can go. And when he did that, I just nosed the plane down and landed on the ground. And after all the dust had settled, I get out of the plane, and I looked at the guy from the airport, and I looked one way, and I looked at the other, and I said, how much did I use? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, how big's the runway? And he goes, oh, 10,000 feet. I said, well, how much did I use? He goes, no, about 6,000 feet. I said, oh man, we're always doing it again. So, yeah.
Not only that, Dan, but if I remember right, you landed it so well that you said, hey, do you want me to taxi it off?
Yeah, so as I was taxiing down the runway, I'm on the radio and I'm controlling it with my feet. I'm actually steering it down the runway, and I come over the radio and I say, hey guys, I know I'm probably holding a lot of people up here. You guys want me to just turn this thing off the runway here to get it out of the way? They're like, absolutely not. Just stop where you are and turn everything off.
So there's another side story going on here, because your wife is tracking your flight. She knows where you're supposed to be and at what time, and she's kind of convinced in her mind that something has gone wrong because you're about 20 minutes off. What many people did not realize was that her sister's husband died the year before while she was pregnant. And his wife was, at this point, 6 months pregnant. And so there were a lot of side stories going on. Listen, there's a lot of things I admire about you, Darren. We've gotten to know each other somewhat by phone, but your faith is obviously very important to you. I know we typically wouldn't do that at a meeting like this, but it's such a vital part that when you interviewed on the Today Show, you told Savannah Guthrie that one of the qualifications, you would not speak to her unless she allowed you to talk about your faith. And to her credit, by the way, not only did she allow you to talk about it, she asked you questions to prompt you about the importance of that. So I'll let you say a word about the importance of your faith in dealing with this situation.
I mean, you look at the situation, you're like, man, how did that happen? How did, you go through all the scenarios and miracles. I've gotten an 8, and I quit counting. I mean, there's more than that.
The pilot?
The pilot, I mean, aortic tear. Had numerous doctors tell me he'll die right there on the floor. He's flying again. There's nothing wrong with him physically, mentally. He is totally fine after being unconscious for an hour and a half.
Wow.
I mean, so there's just a lot that goes into it. And you sit and you look at the whole situation and you say, well, how did you do it? That's the only answer I got. That's it. It's a God thing.
That's awesome. Man, thank you so much for spending some
I want
time.
to ask one thing.
Yeah,
I
please.
know we didn't talk about that. How many of you guys in here are installers? Just raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys are retailers or dealers? Okay, so a few. I will tell you guys this. When I started in the business 23 years ago, my dad took the Publix mentality because we're from Lakeland, so Publix started. I'm sorry for taking
No, don't, please.
So I actually, as a requirement to start our business, he made me start on the installation truck. You don't even know this. So I had to go with each trade for 6 months. The wood flooring crew, carpet crew, hard surface crew. So I literally have done what you guys are here representing. So when I say I appreciate what this is doing for our industry and the way this is going, hats off.
Thank you. Chris next.
Yeah.
So guys, we've been through a transition. We talked a little bit about that. You're getting an opportunity to meet the new leader of CFI, and he comes with some vast experience, and I think you're going to be really excited about the direction, this new direction that we're taking. Chris and I have known each other for years, had not seen each other for a lot of years. I actually worked with him at Shaw many years ago, and he's had his own work group. He's got the background and experience to respect, appreciate what you guys do, and to lead us forward. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, it is such a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I talk loud, and this is just going to make it worse. And I'm not looking down at my text or phone, but I'm timing myself because my gracious companions here gave me 10 minutes to talk to my new organization. So if you think I'm annoyed, yell a little bit. I am so excited. I've been looking forward to this day since I started on May 15th. This is a great organization. Let me rephrase that. It's a great collection of really incredible members, okay? We have to become a great organization. What we need to do is we need the level of our organization to match the level of the individual contributors that make up this organization, if that makes sense. So we're going to have an opportunity on Thursday to talk a lot more about my vision. But really I want to talk just today to give you some high-level concepts that I want you to think about. The first thing is, who are we as an organization and where do we fit in the industry today? Right? The hardest thing to do is to look at yourself in the mirror and to be honest with yourself. And then try and figure out if what you see in the mirror is what other people see in the mirror. And we need to understand that. And we need to understand, what do we want to be? You know, I've gotten to meet a whole bunch of you, and I want to meet every single one of you before I leave, and I want to hear your thoughts, and I want to hear your visions for this organization. But quite frankly, the industry needs us. Our membership needs us as an organization to continue to grow. You know, I think I've heard it a dozen or so times since I've been here. What are you going to change? Everybody wants to know about change. Nobody likes change. Change is scary. Change isn't the word we're going to use. What we're going to do is we're going to expand, we're going to grow, and we're going to improve. Okay? We are absolutely by far the premier certification company or certification organization in our industry. And I don't think you'd find too many people who would want to argue with that. You know, Jim Walker started this with his wife Jane. So glad you guys are here. I got to say hello to Jim, and Jim, I think you remembered it after I brought it up, but Jim and I, 23 years ago was the first time I met Jim Walker, and he and a gentleman by the name of Pete Dosha and myself got together, and we decided we were going to change the world when it came to installation, and we were going to start a company called, I think, Jim, we called it like Installation USA or something. We were so creative. And we went and met with a gentleman by the name of Tony White and Aaron Ripper at Home Depot, and we told them they were absolute fools if they hired anybody but the three of us to install all their flooring. Needless to say, I went on and got another job, and Jim continued CFI, and Home Depot never returned our calls. But is that a fair assessment, Jim? Yes, it is. So, but that was our first time. And just real quick, I'll give you my background. I've had a unique background. Went right to work as a Shaw trainee, January 8th, 1990. The person that put me in this industry is back in the right corner, Danny Crutchfield. He's still with Shaw Industries, but he was my trainer. And I don't think I've ever told him this, but God, I looked up to him. I really did. I wanted to be him. He taught me about ethics. He taught me about morals. He taught me about business principles. He taught me how to sell carpet. He taught me the importance of having my nails be clipped and cleaned when I'm showing a deck board. And the biggest thing Danny taught me, Danny, I never told you this, he said, don't ever stop contributing to your 401k. I've never, ever forgotten that, and I've done it everywhere I've gone. So thank you, Danny. So I spent about 10 years in manufacturing, maybe 11 years, and had the opportunity to join the Home Depot in business development. And after a couple of years of business development for Home Depot, they asked me to take over their installation services business as their general manager. So I was responsible for the biggest category, I was responsible for all of daycare core categories, but the biggest of which was flooring, then countertops, paint, window treatments. And so my job was to work with all the installation service providers, workrooms, and things like that around the country. And I absolutely fell in love with installation. I fell in love with workrooms, I fell in love with the installers, but it was the first time that I started to understand how the stakeholders interacted in this industry. And at the end of the line, which is the finished project, which is what I refer to as fulfilling the project, is the most important thing, right? Nobody comes into a store to buy a piece of carpet to set it in their garage and look at it and take their neighbors over and say, does this look good? No, this is really about the finished project, and that's what all of our retail partners are going to be judged on. So after I left the Home Depot, I started my own business called National Installation Solutions, Inc., or NISI. And I became a workroom, and I decided I was going to build an installer-centric workroom. Reason being is I thought it was a lot easier to attract installers instead of trying to bribe them, because you're bracketed, right, economically on how much you can charge and how much you can pay. But it was my opportunity to address all the things that bothered me throughout my career, and that was the disconnect between all of the stakeholders. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But in owning my own workroom, I wanted to address the disconnect when it came to installation professionals. So I wanted to do everything I did in opening my business to be from an installer perspective. What's important to the installation professional? And that's how I developed my own business. And we ran that business for 11 years before we decided to sell off most of the business back in 2016. But it was the most enjoyable time of my life in working with installation professionals and making ourselves better and going out and grabbing accounts. Last 5 years, I spent doing contract work and board work, all in the flooring industry. So all told, I've been in this business for 32 years. It's pretty well-rounded. I've been in manufacturing, I've been in retail, and I've been in installation. And now I'm here. The way I got here is interesting, here to CFI. You know, in case you don't know, this is a nonprofit. As Robert can tell you, or John can tell you, you don't come to a nonprofit to get rich. There's no stock options here, right? Jim and Jane know this, right? You come here because it means something. So I'm in the, I hope you think this is shocking, but I'm actually in the fourth quarter of my career. Though I wish I were a young man, I wish I was in the first half, but I'm in the fourth quarter of my career. And in your fourth quarter, just like in a sporting event, the minutes matter more, right? The time matters more. The results matter more. What you're playing for matters more. And I saw there was an opening to lead CFI. And I knew what CFI was about, and I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. I want to make a difference. I want to change the perception of installation fulfillment in the industry. I want to hear or solve what everybody refers to as an installation crisis. I call it a challenge. What Gary went through was a crisis. Our mission is to do something different. Our mission is to grow, our mission is to expand, our mission is to change the industry. And the reason why that's our mission, because the industry needs it. The future of our industry needs it, the future of installation professionals need it. And that's what we need to do at CFI. CFI needs to become an organization that is comparable to the best of you. And we need to work on that together. So what I'm setting you up for is a conversation on Thursday that's going to talk about our strategy. Now remember one thing, and this is very, very important. I know we are a very loyal bunch, and I appreciate you guys giving me the grace and the attention and the opportunity to include myself. And I hope over the years that I will earn that trust with you and earn that loyalty with you, that I become one of you. But in the meantime, my job is to steer this organization to the future. And one thing that I want to make clear that we all collectively have to remember, that there's a lot of passion in this room, there's a lot of dedication, there's a lot of volunteerism. I've never seen anything like this, and I commend you all for it. The passion and loyalty to each other and the desire to improve is just really impressive. That being said, just because we're a collective membership organization, just because we're a nonprofit, doesn't mean we don't need to be structured and run like a business. That's what we have to do. And what I mean by that is, to be a healthy organization, we have to have mission, vision, and values. We have to have a strategy. We have to have a plan to fulfill that strategy. We have to have goals, and we have to have processes, and we have to have measurements. A great example is, if you don't do those things, things get lost. Energy gets wasted. Imagine going on a car trip without the destination determined. How do you know if you're making progress? How do you know if you're heading in the right direction? If your car's not tuned up and riding squared away, how much energy are you wasting as you go down the road? Those are things that, especially as a nonprofit, we can't afford to do. We have to be buttoned up, squared away, focused. That's the only way we're going to accomplish what you want, what the industry wants, and what the industry needs. A great example today: when you don't have structure, opportunities are missed. I found out today there was a certification meeting, right? There were 30 people in the certification meeting. People wondering where I was. I got a text about 45 minutes after the meeting started from my friend Dave. Are you going to be able to make the meeting? What meeting? What meeting? I don't know anything about it. There's nothing on the agenda. Nobody told me anything about it. Hour and a half later, I run into Dave in the lobby. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you about the meeting. Well, I mean, this is kind of, and I'm not trying to beat on Dave, but this is a great example of what happens when we don't have organization and structure. Opportunities are missed, time is wasted, energy is wasted. And as you get to know me, you're going to understand I'm a very high energy person. I believe in integrity, I believe in effort, I believe in focus, I believe in structure, and I believe in being cost effective and efficient. That's my responsibility to myself and to all of you. And that, I'm going to commit to you, is the organization we're going to build. Something that meets your level of performance, your level of pride, your level of dedication. Because it's irresponsible of me to run an organization that doesn't match the level of Rollin, or any of you. I'm just saying Rollin because he's in the front and he's giving me a death stare. But, or Rod, or any of you out there, or Jerry, we've got to, as an organization, as a leadership team, we have got to deliver the same level of passion, integrity, effort, and professionalism the rest of you have been doing for 29 years. Okay? So I'm committing to you that me and my team will rise to your level of competence and success. So with that being said, before I wrap up, and I've got about 5 more minutes, let's see. What the hell, I'm the president. I'm going to talk as long as I want. I want to introduce you to our new leadership team, which I'm very grateful to be a part of. Dave, if you'll stand up, you all know Dave. Dave is obviously very good at what he does, very knowledgeable, not good on time management or communication. But I want to thank Dave. I honestly, Dave's knowledge is an integral part of what we do. We're going to work as a team together to deliver what's needed. But Dave Garden is our Executive Director of Training and Education, so thank you, Dave. And then John McHale, if you'll stand up. John is the most humble man in the world. It's so funny, the first day I started, I'm asking about the team, and by the way, is Ren in here? Ren! Hey, Ren. So we'll talk about John first, but, I asked what people do, and I said, the feedback I kept getting about John McHale is, he does everything. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. He must be a really nice guy. Everybody says he does everything. After about a month, I remember driving home from Dalton, and I'm going, son of a bitch, that guy does everything. And so, John, we wouldn't be here without you, so thank you very much. And then you guys all know Ren in the background. Ren helps John do everything. So thank you, Ren. You've been here a long time, and we really appreciate you. And then last but not least is the newest member to our team. Please stand up. This is Mandy Jackson. And what Mandy's done, Mandy joined us July 6th, 5th, something like that. And so I knew Mandy would be good internally because she's very organized. She's got a lot of administrative experience, and she's going to help Dave. She's going to help manage Dave, John, and myself. And so we were thrilled to get her. And then one day the truck arrived from Forney. As all of you know, we shut down Forney and moved all the materials, and you didn't have to sit down. And we moved it all to Dalton. So, with Scott's help, we found the warehouse, and John's help. John actually found it from Texas before any of us. And so this big truck arrives at 2 in the morning, and the truck driver wants us to start unloading at like 6:30 in the morning. So we got Dave Garden, flooring professional extraordinaire. Chris McKee, lifelong flooring person. Scott Humphrey, lifelong flooring person. We get there, and who tells us to get out of the way, gets on the forklift and empties the whole 53-foot trailer in about, I timed it, remember, it was an hour and 14 minutes? Mandy. So we are so grateful for Mandy. Lastly, before I give you something to think about for Thursday, I want to thank our marketing team of Tony and Catherine for everything you did to help contribute to this. And last but not least, Frida. Frida, please stand up. Everybody knows Frida. Frida's kind of that core nuclear battery that makes everything run, and like a nuclear submarine, it only needs refilled every 30 years. So thank you very much, Frida, for everything you do for us. So here's what I want you to think about, okay? We need to become a great organization, and we can't do it alone. The leadership can't do it. We're a nonprofit. I can't go out and hire a team of 20 people. This organization has existed for 29 years, beginning with the spirit of Jim and Jane Walker. They instilled that passion into you. Robert carried it forward, and they're moving on, and I want to thank them for everything. So thank you, guys. But what we have to do is we can never let that passion and commitment leave as we move forward. We are going to be doing a lot of things to not change, right? We're not going to use that word, to grow and expand. And it is going to be absolutely a requirement to have the passionate participation that you've given to this organization for 29 years. I'm going to ask even more from you. But what we are going to give back is we're going to give back our vision, our mission, our values, why we exist. This is why we exist going forward. We exist to promote, elevate, and represent professionalism of the flooring industry. Okay? That's a lot broader than we exist to certify installers. We do more than that, because we are more than that, and you are more than that. All of you are more than a certified installer. You are business people, you are volunteers, you are contributing to this organization, you are passionate supporters of our industry. So what we're going to look at and how we're beginning the framework or the thesis of our strategy going forward, and I want to share all this with you because I want you to know it, because you're going to be part of it. The thesis surrounding and underpinning our strategy is this. It's not the installation crisis. It's not the shortage of installers, okay? It's not that we need better installers. The thesis around our strategy is this. We're in a very, very interesting industry that has 4 primary stakeholders. Those stakeholders are the manufacturer and or supplier, right? Distributor, manufacturer, what have you. The next stakeholder is the reseller. And I say reseller because it could be a retailer, could be a commercial house, could be a distributor, what have you, workroom. Third, you've got the installation professional. And fourth, you have the consumer, right? Those are the 4 stakeholders in what we do for a living, what our industry does for a living. The problem is, historically, to this day, so forever, those 4 stakeholders are not integrated. They're not integrated at all. They're siloed, completely siloed. And it's really so illogical when you step out of the game and you look into it and say, wait a minute, these 4 stakeholders are totally interdependent on each other, but they operate like the other 3 are not part of their business. We're going to change that. And what we're going to do is we're going to value map what's important for each one of these stakeholders. And then how do we make CFI the cog that pulls them all together? Okay? So our focus is going to be to figure out, how do we become the most important body organization in the industry? We do it by pulling them together. Nobody would buy one thing the manufacturers would make if it couldn't be installed. Nobody would buy anything from a retail store if it couldn't be installed. We as installation professionals need someone to manufacture that product, need someone to sell that product. So we need to work with them. But what's been missing over the years, and it's not CFI's fault, it's not the retailer's fault, it just hasn't happened. This room should be filled with 4 or 5 times more members that are installers. It should be filled with 4 or 5 times this number of people who are retailers. The retailers need to understand the value of the installation professional. And it all is going to be centered on understanding how fulfillment works. Because at the end of the day, no matter what the folks at Shaw, Mohawk, or Engineered believe, the consumer has no idea who makes that product. And no matter what the retailer thinks, the consumer's not going to form their opinion by their in-store experience. The consumer's going to form their opinion on the product they bought and the store that sold it to them based on how their finished, fulfilled project looks, right? Now we could, as installation professionals, step away right then and say, hey, we're obviously the most important piece of the puzzle. But then we'd be ignoring exactly what I just said. We are integrated. We can't exist without each other. So what we have to do is figure out how do we get the other parties to be part of us so we become one. So that the retailer says, I get it. I get what CFI is doing. I want to be part of CFI, and I want all my installers to be CFI. So that's really where we're going, guys, is how do we lead the charge in the industry recognizing the importance of the final objective of the consumer, which is the ultimate stakeholder, is the finished, fulfilled project and our role in it. So we're going to talk a lot more about that on Thursday. Again, I'm so grateful for the team we have. I'm excited. I'm accepting the challenge that I feel is spoken and unspoken by the membership. We got to increase the membership. Our goal is not to, and I've heard this said to a lot of people, our goal is not to be financially self-sustaining. That's not our goal. That's a requirement. That's a must. Our goal, our mission, is to make a difference. And our goal and our mission is to be indispensable. Everybody in the industry needs to say, I need CFI part of my business, and I want to be part of CFI. And we're gonna, I promise you, I commit to you, with your help, we're gonna get there, but we're gonna get this organization to your level of individual contribution. So thank you. I look forward to talking to you on Thursday, and I'll be around anytime anyone wants to grab me. So I appreciate it. Thank you.